Okay. Brian White is, it's you, right, Brian?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Did you change your name after spending all that time in Central Europe?
I did not.
You
I
did
did
not.
not.
Okay, so you haven't taken on some new identity.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, I just never know about you, Brian. You have to be aware of your change, your morphing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, let's get right into it. We won't mess around anymore. So the number one question on many people's mind right now, well, at least it's a question that's on your mind because you brought it up on X the other day, and that is, are EVs a fad?
Oh, it's over, you guys. It's over. EV's had a good run. I have one data point that is 1/4 of a slight dip. Guys, if we look back at the adoption curve over years, you'll see dips. It is not universal that line go up. Line doesn't always go up. It's the trend we look at. How granular do you want to get? Do you want to look at a single day as a data point? You're going to find some really noisy data if you do that. The longer the trend, the smoother you get. Are there going to be companies that that say, no, I'm just not in. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make EVs. No, they're all going to. Because if you wish to lean on your government, like if you had like a Tata Motors, for example, where the Indian government really is in their pocket, beholden to them, they could say, look, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to push EVs, even though they have. This is not an actual example. It's a hypothetical.
Right.
They could say, we're going to just do our thing that we've already been doing that we're very good at, and we're going to do it forever. Toyota could say that in Japan. Japan's going to protect us. We'll do whatever we want to do. That's great in your market. But if you wish to be an international player, you have to make the cars that sell in other markets. What are the biggest car markets? You've got the US, China, and Europe. Two of those three are going all electric, have already announced the all electric shift. And the US has some states that have already enacted it. I think 7 at last count. California, Washington, I think Oregon, a couple back east, maybe Colorado. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But if you wish to sell in these markets, you need a compelling, affordable, reasonably priced EV. Now, Toyota's been lagging, but Lexus apparently has an EV that people really like, which is also Toyota, meaning as much as they talk about hydrogen and solid state and hybrids, there are electric cars from these manufacturers. And to suggest, I don't know anyone personally who bought an EV and then decided to go back to gas. I've heard of them. I'm sure they exist. There are people who think the earth is flat. Um, Sasquatch is real. But the but there's no reason to think that they exist in any meaningful number. And the people I've known who known, the people I have heard of who have gone back to gas said, I had a bad experience with a car, I'm going back. They'll come back around. They'll loop back around once the reliability is sufficiently robust in their view.
Right, right. Yeah, and of course, the reliability issue really seems to, from every article I've read that really takes any kind of a deep dive, it really seems to come down to superchargers or the unavailability of chargers for those other car companies. All right, so
Yes.
your opinion is that this is the EVs are not a fad. Of
Mhm.
course, I agree with you on this. I totally agree, but I also agree well, I know you would agree with my statement, and everybody that's listening probably would agree with it, but I'll make it anyway. Is the reason it's not a fad is because ultimately it will be less expensive, clearly less expensive for the same value, meaning body style, paint, what do you want to call it? The quality of the paint job, all the kinds of frou-frou things that people make the decision based on. If you had two cars sitting right next to each other and you go, that's a great looking car. And that's a great looking car. And that one's pretty safe. And that one's pretty safe. And that one's a brand that I trust. And that one's a brand that I trust. If all those things were taken into consideration and you looked at those two sitting side by side, the electric would be $5,000 less than the ICE, even before operating expense, and the game is over. So no, that would be my main reason for saying it's not a fan.
I would agree. A while back, I made a apparently controversial statement. I didn't realize it at the time, talking about fake meats, things like Impossible Burger,
Yes.
Beyond Burger. I think those taste great. Do they taste like beef? No, but they're good. And what I'd said was, if those reach a point where they are cheaper than meat, that could be the beginning of a generational shift away from meat, because a lot of us still eat the cheap foods that we ate in college. We liked it then. We developed a taste for it. And if when you're broke and you have a choice between beef patties and veggie patties and they both taste good to you, you're going to go with the cheaper one if it's all you can afford.
Right.
And we could get to the point where the beef patty is looked at as a rich man's treat. And I think we will also look at the gasoline car and say, that's a rich man's treat. Who's got the time to go to gas stations? Are you going to sit 20 minutes at Costco to save 10 pennies? 10 pennies. Guys, what are you doing? Somebody should nobody tell them that it's half price at home at worst, in the US at least. I pay about a quarter of what I would at a public charger by charging at home.
Right.
It's so cheap, it's so convenient. And oil changes, forget the cost of oil changes. You got to go sit there for an hour. That's terrible. I hated that experience.
Yeah.
It was never about the cost to me. It was about the convenience. And it was so inconvenient. And then they try and upsell you.
Yeah, that was the part I was going to talk about. Yes.
All the nonsense. And you don't know which part's true or real. And you're just like stuck there. Ridiculous.
All right. Part B of this conversation is something that I might have even bridged with you months ago, but I think it's time to bridge it again. And the reason, I know she's not on the show this time.
No, but that's the sequel, right? Bridge it again.
Yes, bridge it again. So, did she, yeah, anyway, this morning or yesterday, Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, said hybrids for them are not a bridge item. Toyota is obviously pushing the heck out of their hybrids. BYD, clearly, their numbers came out this morning and their BYDs, they're still selling more more hybrids than they are full electrics. So they're certainly actively engaged in that particular market. Now I'm going to pull up a couple of, excuse me a second while I grab these samples, because nobody knows that I used to make bicycle water bottles.
Nobody. It's one of the best kept secrets.
That's one of the best kept secrets. People, these are the kind of bottles where you pull the tab out, okay? And then you go like this and you can squeeze the bottle and squeeze the water into your mouth. Well, turns out there was a lot of people out there that wanted it to be kind of just take a little dribble. They just wanted a little bit. And there was another bunch of people out there that wanted a gusher. They wanted a lot at once. And there were people that kind of liked it in the middle. So I'm not bragging or complaining. I designed a new way to do this, which is kind of like a shower cap. And the idea was the further you pulled the little poppet out, the more water you got. And guess what? We called it dual flow, and it became a big hit. And we became the largest bottle maker in the world of this style of bottle. You'll notice one of our customers was U.S. Army. They were the largest customer we ever had, in fact. But anyway, the point is, this was a hybrid of a kind, okay? I also have another product that we made our living on. I still make part of my living on this, which is tire liners that go in a bicycle tire between the tire and the tube, and they stop puncture flats. This is a polyurethane that's very hard for thorns and rocks and stuff to get through. Well, we tried for years to get it to be tougher and tougher and tougher, but the tougher we got it, the harder it was. And so sometimes it would hurt the inner tube.
Mhm.
And then we go, okay, we can't have it hurting inner tubes. We can't have it actually causing a flat. So he says, we'll make it a little softer. Well, when we made it a little softer, then the goat heads could sometimes get through more frequently.
Mhm.
So what we did was, again, I guess I invented this. I know I did actually. Anyway, was to put a hard surface, the very hardest we could possibly get, up towards the tire, and a softer polyurethane on the back, which was the part that was touching the inner tube. Therefore, it didn't hurt the inner tube and it maximized the protection. That's kind of a hybrid, right? So there's
Mhm.
lots of examples in life where hybrids make sense. Those are two that just happened to be in my world as I was out there making stuff. So, is it possible that the idea of a range extender, I don't know if they've got the perfect combination yet, but some combination of some size battery with some kind of power and some size of engine, a gas engine, whatever you want to run it on. You can run it on whale oil. I don't know, but some kind of an engine that allows you to store a fluid so that you get these two different ways of moving the vehicle, or where one engine is charging the other motor or the other battery supply, so that you can maximize your range and or maybe keep the cost down of the batteries, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I've said my piece. Tell me why Toyota, Ford, General Motors, and a bunch of these other companies that are building these hybrids and claiming that they're for the long term are completely all wet.
So we lost you there for a bit, Randy. You were all over the place. You were walking down a dark, dark path, and I'm glad we got you back here at the end. I didn't know where we were going. I just knew that we were apparently on a bicycle built for two. So let's look at who BYD sells to. They're selling primarily to people who do not have home charging. There are a lot of, I can understand range anxiety if you don't have home charging. I get it. So that part makes sense. The government is still pushing away from that. They will go pure EV before too long. The years are numbered. Toyota, I think their case is a little bit different. Toyota really dialed in the internal combustion engine to such a degree that they don't want to sacrifice that advantage. They are, in terms of powertrain longevity, an absolute market leader. Everybody surely must know someone who has a Sienna or a Tundra or a Hilux, if you're in the market where it's called that, that's got hundreds of thousands of miles without a rebuild. Now, I've seen people say, when I made a video about the million-mile batteries, I saw people say, "Oh yeah, but my uncle's got a Mercedes with 2 million miles on it." So, right, it's been rebuilt 3 times, I'm sure,
Right, right, right.
because you can keep anything going forever. There are street trolleys in New Orleans that are over 100 years old, but it's a ship of Sisyphus or the ship of Thesis. Sisyphus? Yeah, push that rock up a hill. You get the idea. So I think Toyota doesn't want to cede that territory. It's territory where they're very good. And in terms of electric drivetrains, they are not number one. Are they even in the top 5?
Right, right.
Maybe. So I think that's their hesitation. I don't know enough about the market in Japan to know what percentage of owners have access to home charging. That could be a second factor
I would,
because
I
you
would
do.
say, I would say, I was just over a couple of years ago, Toyota, also South Korea. The, everybody lives in an apartment. I mean, it's just like, the whole city of Tokyo, the whole city of Seoul. I mean, they're just, as far as you can see, high-rise apartment buildings. So yes, I would say that charging at home, although they also use a ton of public transportation. So
Mhm.
it isn't,
And once you get out of the cities, in Japan at least I know, uh, people get driveways. It
Mhm,
it
right,
it
right,
gets short outside the city for sure.
right.
So those could be hesitations. Another is Just a lack of batteries. And I know that in the last year, we've finally seen battery supplies start catching up to demand. But if you've got a choice between 5 or 10 hybrids to one EV, that is a consideration. And you say, "Well, yes, but they should build more EVs." I agree. But if Toyota switched to 100% EVs today, there would not be enough batteries.
Right.
It will take time to get us there. And just like the people who complain the grid isn't ready, the grid's a lot closer to ready than you think. And good news, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to move new sales over to electric, and then another 20 years to get rid of the cars that are already on the road,
Sure.
largely. So I am not opposed to hybrids universally, but I can tell you there is no world in which I would buy one myself. It doesn't make sense for me, for my use case. It's just not for me.
Interesting. So I had not thought about the home charging aspect of it. I don't know how I missed that piece. And that would make a lot of sense. But you have been absolutely at the lead in terms of reporting on the what you might call street side charging, more of the localized charging. If governments and or apartment owners, the people who own the buildings, want this change and or see that their consumer, their tenant wants to have charging in the building, that's not a terribly huge capital expense for an apartment owner to put in order to make sure he's got tenants coming in.
Mhm.
So I think we would start to see that trend. Maybe the trend would start in Santa Monica because there's an awful lot of apartment living in Santa Monica. And it's probably the number one, maybe Fremont, maybe some Northern California city has more per capita than Santa Monica in terms of Teslas, but I don't know what it would be. I know that it's the only charger I've ever gone to where I had to wait in line. I mean, actually wait in line. I mean, it was like
Hmm.
there was 9 cars ahead of us. So it's a high density and high density of apartments. So maybe that would be a place I should check out. Maybe I can find some friends of mine that still live in Santa Monica and find out if apartment owners are starting to outfit for chargers.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Do it. Report
Okay,
back.
I'll do that. All right. So the answer to the questions that we asked today were no, EVs are not a fad. B, hybrids are a fad, or maybe just a bridge. Sorry, Jim Farley, we don't agree, but they might be a reasonable bridge. It isn't a stupid bridge. It just might be a good temporary idea to get us to the place where everybody can A, afford, B, get charged up and not feel any anxiety. Is that about where we got to?
Sounds right to me.
All right. Okay. Well, then in that case, we'll say adieu. Could you say adieu?
Adieu.
Adieu. All right. And it's been great talking to you.